Hey guys, I've been debating telling this story for a while, but I think the story needs to be told. It's just too strange and bizarre not to tell. Now, I'm leaving out all the names of the people in the story, and I've changed the dates around, but I can assure you that it's all true, and I am telling the story to the best of my ability. In early 2006, I helped out on the filming of a documentary inspirational film. It had an all-star cast of the best and the brightest in the industry, and the movie was filmed over a couple of weeks, and during that filming process, I got to meet several of my favorite modern-day philosophers and speakers. And after my job was done, the film went to post-production, and a couple months later, there was a red carpet premiere for the film. It was a star-studded event. Camera bulbs were flashing, and the film was very well received by the audience. When the film was over, and after all the press was done, we all went out to an after party. And of course, the stars of the film, the crew, and all the VIPs went to celebrate the completion of the project and a job well done. Now, at the after party, a friend who I had made during the filming of the movie said I had to meet this guy that he had met at the party, who was looking for a composer for a project he was working on. Now, during the filming, I shared some of my music with the friend, and he was very impressed by my abilities. My friend explained to me that this gentleman was extremely wealthy and powerful, and in conversation, the gentleman mentioned that he was assembling a team to help him with his project. So he took me upstairs to introduce me. When we got upstairs, my friend led me across the room to a circle of people surrounding a man. Now, the man was telling stories to the small group of people, and they were all laughing along to his jokes and nodding their heads and smiling. But the people seemed, well, they almost seemed hypnotized. My friend waited patiently until he was able to catch the man's attention, and then the gentleman excused himself from the group and he made his way over to us. I watched the man approach, and immediately I was captivated by his presence. He was tall, about 6'3", 6'4". I would guess he was between the ages of 46 to 50 years old, well built. He had a modern cut suit on that really showed off his physique very well. And he was pretty handsome. He reminded me a lot of like Brad Pitt's character in Inglourious Basterds. As soon as the gentleman got up to us, my friend made the introduction. "D, this is Danny. This is the composer I told you about." "Oh, yes. Very good. I need your help. I've heard very good things about you." "Oh, good. What are you looking to do exactly?" I asked as I took a sip from my drink and tried my best to look relaxed and cool. I was in my late 20s and I didn't have very much money, and through dumb luck I had got on this production, and if this could lead to another gig right away, that would be awesome, especially doing my passion, which was music, and not just production assistant work. "I am writing a book, a very special book, and I want music to go along with it. Can you handle that?" "Well, yeah, of course," I said. "Great. You're hired then. Are you local?" Yeah," I stammered, not believing my dumb luck. Could this be my first big break? "Sounds great," the man said and handed me his card. "Let's meet on Monday afternoon in Brentwood, and I'll go over some specifics of what I need to have happen. Call me that morning and I'll give you the time and place." "Sounds good to me," I said, shaking his hand. "Hey, it was really good meeting you." "Call me on Monday," the man said with a smile, and turned back to the group of people that was waiting for him to return. Now, needless to say, I was pretty excited. I thought, this is it. I'm making it happen. This is the start of my music career. Now, all that weekend, I was on cloud 9. I can't remember ever feeling so optimistic in my entire life. Now, that Monday, I called D on the phone, and he gave me an address and a time to meet him on the west side of Los Angeles. And on the way there, I was a little bit more than nervous. I left extra early to deal with the LA traffic, and I made my way from Pasadena to Brentwood. When I pulled up the tiny French cafe where we were supposed to meet, I could see that he was already there, sitting at an outside table chatting with a couple of waitresses. I could see them laughing at his jokes, and he sat back in his chair, dressed casual but still nice. I watched him and the waitresses interact for a minute while I tried to calm down and get my notebook and pen ready, and I'm gathering up all my courage to sit down for this meeting. As I approached the small table, he stood up and gave me a big smile. "Thank you so much for being on time. Let's get to it. But first, what would you like to eat?" "No, I'm fine, really," I said as I sat down at the table. "Nonsense, I'm buying." I'm not sure what they have here." "I'll order for you. Waitress?" One of the waitresses came over and de-ordered food in perfect French. The girl smiled and struck up a conversation with him in French. She was obviously a native speaker. After a minute, they switched back to English, and she complimented him on his perfect accent. Dee just smiled and nodded as the waitress went to the cafe to put in our order. "So, you're writing a book?" I said while readying my pen. "And you're looking for some music to accompany the book?" "Yes, and like I said, it's a very special book." "What's the book about, if you don't mind me asking?" Dee just smiled. "I am looking for you to put together a band and write a score around the book." "Oh, great. What sort of music are you looking for?" I want it to be dramatic," Dee said. "Think Pink Floyd meets Chopin. Can you handle that?" "Oh, well, yeah, of course." "Good. This book is thousands of years in the making, and we need it all to be perfect." I glanced up from my notepad where I was jotting down Dee's wants and needs. "We?" I asked. Yes, I should mention that I am representing someone very special on this project, and he is very excited to finally get the truth out there. Like I said, it has been years in the making, and the people need to know the truth." "The truth about what?" "Everything." Dee paused and took a sip from his drink. "So, what do you have for me? What resources can you pull to make this happen?" "Well, I know several fantastic producers and studio musicians. I'm sure with the right motivation, they'd be happy to be part of the project." "Great. Anything you need, you have. Understand?" "Thank you. I look forward to getting started as soon as possible." "Good. You can start calling on them today. Just make it happen." "Huh. Very good," I said, and I started compiling a list of names of people I could call on. Right then our food arrived, and we made small talk over the meal. After we finished eating, Dee got up and said, "I gotta run to the bank real quick. I have to conduct some business." "Okay." He motioned me to come with him, so we walked up the street to the bank, and there was the first time I started to notice things were a little weird with Dee. He walked in the door of the bank like he owned the place, and walked right past the security guard and right behind the counter. Dee made his way back to a desk, picked up a phone, and made a call. I looked around the bank, and it was like nobody even noticed him. It was like he wasn't even there. Then he walked up behind one of the tellers and asked her to cut him a cashier's check. She immediately stopped helping the customer that was in front of her and helped Dee. Now, I have to admit, I was a bit in shock with what I was witnessing, but I chalked it up to he was obviously a high net worth customer, and as they say, money talks. Dee walked from behind the counter and handed me a cashier's check for $10,000. "Here, is this enough to get you going?" I stared at the check and just nodded. "Yeah, this is good." "Great. Go and get the team together and start writing. We will touch base in a couple days, and as a matter of fact, I am having a little party at my place on Thursday. I'll see you then." "Okay, sounds great," I said, putting the check into my wallet. "Good." Dee then turned around and walked out of the bank, leaving me there, a bit confused and baffled as to not only what I had just witnessed, but more so, just excited to get started on the project. On the way home, I called my friend that had introduced us to thank him for introducing us and let him know that the first meeting went really well. I asked my friend who Dee is and what he does for a living. He said, I don't know too much about him, but from what I've heard, he owns the patents on several pieces of technology that we all use. Now, I'm not going to mention the tech that he owned. However, I can assure you, at some point, most of us have used it or are still using it. Holy crap, are you serious? Yeah, man, he's worth billions with a capital B. So do right by him. He won't play games with you. As soon as I got home, I started calling the people I had met networking in the music industry and pitching them on working on this project. In 2 days, I had everyone on board and assembled. That Thursday morning, I called Dee to tell him the good news. He gave me his address so I could come to the party, and he wanted me to give him all the details in person. So, once again, I made the drive back to West Los Angeles. However, this time it was in the windy hills of Brentwood. I pulled up at the gated estate on top of a mountain that overlooked the northeast. I hit the security buzzer on the gate, and the gate swung open. I pulled up a long driveway and pulled my rather embarrassing beat-up hand-me-down car next to all the Bentleys, Maybachs, and exotic sports cars that lined the drive. And then I saw Dee waiting for me by the entrance of the courtyard. "Thank you for coming," he said as I made my way towards him. "Oh, well, thank you for having me. I have some good news to share with you about the project." "Great," he said as he motioned me into the courtyard. As we walked through the courtyard of the ultra-contemporary house, which sort of reminded me of the Tony Stark house from Iron Man, the yard was lined with large Chinese statues. "Are those from the City of the Dead?" I asked Dee as we passed by the rather ominous and intimidating-looking statues. "Yes, how did you know that?" Dee said with a curious tone. "Oh, I read about them in National Geographic when I was a kid. I didn't know you could take them out of China. I thought they were sacred or something." "My Chinese friends gifted them to me for helping them out with some business dealings." "Oh, well, they're quite impressive." "Ah, thank you. Let's get inside. Feel free to walk around and talk to people. And oh, grab some food or something to drink. I'll be back in a little while." Dee motioned to an extravagant setup of food and beverages. "Hey, cool. And hey, Dee, thanks again for the invite." Dee gave a nod and went to go entertain some of the guests that were in what I would only call the living room, but the house on the inside was more like a museum. Priceless art hung on the walls. The colors of the paintings were reflecting off the polished concrete floors, and the floor-to-ceiling windows soared to show the entire cityscape of the valley below. As I walked around the house, I noticed he had Oscars and Grammys and all sorts of awards belonging to famous people from yesteryear. I made my way to the backyard, where there were people swimming and having fun in the infinity pool that overlooked the freeways and buildings that became Hollywood in the far-off distance. I sat and made small talk with all the actors and actresses, all the industry types that were at the party. Now, everyone had great things to say about Dee and how much they owe him, and how much he's helped them all throughout the years. When Dee joined us outside, he greeted everyone and asked me to go inside with him to discuss the project. He walked me through the house and into the library, closing the doors behind him. The walls were lined with books, some new, some old, and some very old. "So, tell me what progress you have made on my project." "Well, I've assembled some great studio musicians, and I reached out to a Grammy-winning producer I know to make it all happen. We're all going to be meeting later this week." "Very good. Let me know what you need for money. I'll put you in touch with my business manager, and he will disperse funds from here on out." Then Dee walked over to his bookcase and pulled a very old book off the shelf. "Do you like Shakespeare?" "Oh, of course." This is one of the original printings of Shakespeare's writings. Needless to say, it's one of my prized possessions. The walls of the library were filled with trinkets and treasures, Oscars and Grammy statues and other related awards. There were pictures of Dee from all over the world. Some of the photos looked pretty old, like Polaroids or even older, but he looked the same in pretty much all the photos. Then Dee carefully placed the ancient book back into its proper place on the bookcase and turned to me. You know, I remember when these books first came out. They changed the world. That's what our book is going to do. It's going to change the world. Well, I'm interested to hear more about it. What are you writing about? Oh, I'm not writing the book. It's being written by the person that I work for. You won't ever meet him, as he values his privacy above all else. Dee paused for a moment and then continued, This is a book that needs to be written, because people deserve to know the truth. Well, I'm excited to know what the book is about. It would really help me write the music if I can get an idea of the subject matter. Oh, well, it's a history book. Well, it's more of a retelling of history, the way it actually happened. Now, I'm a big fan of conspiracy theories, guys, and I love a deep, dark rabbit hole to dive into, so this was right up my alley. A history book? Interesting. Dee turned and looked at me and cracked a grin. It's an accurate retelling of history, from Satan's point of view. From Satan's point of view? I studied Dee's expression, looking for some hint of a joke, but it never came. Dee turned and looked out the window and out into the expansive view of the city. What if I told you that everything you've been taught about the devil was a lie? What if I told you that he was the one that gave mankind his freedom, and he is the one that cares about the survival of the human race, his greatest creation? I mean, look at this world. Look at the state of it. Wars, racism, poverty, pollution, the destruction of the environment, all of it. This isn't the way he wanted it. This isn't the way it's supposed to be. Imagine a world without borders, without flags, united for the planet, the environment. That's what he wants this book to do. Even now, we have started buying thousands of hectares of land in the US and abroad, and we have been turning them into sanctuaries for endangered animals. And you see, that's where you come in. You and your team are going to write the songs that the whole world sings. The songs that will bring people together as one, united under his rule. I just stood there in silence, trying to come up with something to say. I know it's a lot to take in all at once, but I will share more with you when the time is right. And with that, Dee just got up and walked out of the library and rejoined his adoring guests. I excused myself, using the excuse of wanting to start writing for the project, and went home, still trying to process everything that was just disclosed to me. As the weeks went by, Dee shared more stories with me. Stories from the book, from history, his version of history. And it was funny. Whenever he told the stories, it was always in a first-person perspective. It was always, I remember when, or when I saw. I joined Dee on many nights out on the town, where everywhere he went, the rich and famous would flock to him, like they knew him, and he was always the center of attention. I started to get pulled into stranger and stranger situations. One morning, I got a call from Dee. He totaled his Ferrari, and he asked me to come by for a meeting about the book. When I got there, he asked me to go to the tow yard with him, and we could talk while he drove. He had several cars, and on that day, he took his Maybach. We chatted about music and talked about the demo songs I had been sending him and how pleased he was with the direction of the music. After about a half hour, we pulled up to the yard where the Ferrari had been towed. I guess Dee needed to get some personal belongings out of the car. When we walked past the gate, the mangled, twisted wreck of the once perfect red sports car was there, and it was nearly torn in half. As I stood there staring at the car in bewilderment, I looked at Dee and I asked him, "How are you not killed?" And Dee smiled. "Just lucky, I guess." But you know, guys, the strangest thing that I think ever happened was one day Dee called me and he said that he needed me to assist him with an errand. I was happy to comply and made my way over to his house, and when I pulled through the big gates, he was standing there with a big power saw and a long extension cord. I immediately knew that this wasn't going to be a boring day. What's going on? My truck got a boot put on it. We're gonna go take it off. Now, I wondered why someone with so much money wouldn't just pay the fine and get the boot removed from the car, but I went along with Dee because I was curious to see what would happen. We pulled up to Rodeo Drive in Los Angeles, where I saw his big F-350 truck parked. Sure enough, with a boot on one of the wheels, making it unable to be driven. We parked and Dee just walked up to the car, put down the saw, walked into a little cafe where he plugged in the extension cord and brought the cord out to the saw. He plugged in the saw and started cutting through the heavy steel boot that was locked onto the tire. The screech and squeal of steel being cut was nearly deafening, and I looked at the people walking by and the people in the little cafe seemingly not even noticing what was going on. They weren't even looking at Dee as he cut through the boot on his truck. In less than 2 minutes, the boot was laying in pieces on the sidewalk, and Dee threw the saw in the back of the truck and retrieved the extension cord and got into the truck, thanked me for the ride, and drove off, leaving me there wondering what had just happened and why not a soul seemed to notice. Over the next couple weeks, Dee shared more with me about the author of the book, how he was very old and very wise, and stressed again that I was not permitted to meet him. But he gave me some hints to his appearance, so when I saw him, I could tell who he was. He also told me his name, which I will not share here. Although I have changed the names and time periods these facts occurred, but I still have some fear even telling this story. Even though everything in it has been changed, I'm just not sure how certain people would feel if they heard it. Well, I was still working on the music every day, meeting with the other musicians, and the writing sessions went long into the night. The songs were good, and the music was mostly focused on the environment, as that was Dee's wish, because, as he put it, nobody would openly go against the book if its message was about the environment. Now, I didn't hear from Dee for a couple days, which was strange, because I checked in often to give him updates on the project and keep him in the loop with everything that was going on my end, because that was my job and responsibility. After about 2 weeks of not hearing from Dee, I drove to his house to check up on him, to see how he was doing, and the gates were open, and the house was empty and everything was gone. A couple days later, I got a call from my friend that introduced us, and Dee had contacted him to let me know that he had to go to Iraq for business, which I found kind of strange because back then, just like now, we were in open conflict in that country. But he assured my friend he would be in contact with me and that the business manager was sending out a check to make sure that everybody was paid. Months went by, and I heard nothing from Dee, until one day, a package arrived at my door, and all that was in the box was a book, a simple green velvet book. His book was completed, and it sits on my bookcase today, and every so often I'll pick it up and I'll look at it, and I'll always remember the strange times in my 20s when I believe I met the devil. Hey guys, Danny here. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I know how it sounds. I get it, guys. I know how it sounds. It sounds completely insane and crazy. But I can assure you that's exactly how it went down. And like I said, I won't disclose the names, the name of the book. I won't disclose the names of the people there or the actual time frame that this actually happened. But that's how it went down, guys. And thank you so much for listening. If you like the story, do me a favor, like the video, subscribe, drop a comment below. And hey, you know what? maybe I'm crazy, right? Maybe everything was completely normal, but it just didn't feel right. It just didn't feel right to me, like inside. Anyway, thank you so much, guys. Stay good, stay safe, and stay on the watch.